1360 WLBK, DeKalb Sycamore.
.60 WLBK, DeKalb County's news and information station. Welcome to the DARA radio show presented by the DeKalb Area Rental Association, an organization of rental property owners and managers united to promote safe and quality housing, fair business practices, and the preservation of property rights. Three landlords with us today to discuss current issues affecting rental housing in the DeKalb area. Jim Mason, as always, with Mason Properties. Jim, welcome back to the airways, my friend. Always a pleasure having you here.
Thank you, Terry.
And then we also have Brad Rubeck of the College Housing Group and the Information Director of DARA. Brad, welcome back, my friend.
Thanks. Good morning.
And with a special guest today, we have Bob Carlson of Carlson Appraisal Services, local real estate appraiser and rental property owner. Bob, welcome to the airways, my friend.
Thank you, Terry.
So we got quite the quality group here today. We're taking callers as well. We want you to call in and chime in on your thoughts on this. 748-1360, 748-1360. And Brad, as we talked on previous shows, this affects virtually everybody living in DeKalb, whether you're a renter, whether you're a landlord, whether you're a homeowner. Tell us how this affects virtually everybody in the community.
Well, there's no question. One way or another, it's going to affect people. We talking about license and inspection now?
Right.
Okay. All right. Yes, absolutely. There's going to be a lot of effect to it.
And you've been successful in recruiting members. Tell us why it's been relatively easy for you guys to build this group and how important this group is.
Well, I think many members, including myself, felt that an organization like this was long overdue. So there really are numerous benefits to becoming a member, one of which is developing the relationships. You know, I've developed quite a few in the last 7 months. And membership also provides education via guest speakers, community updates, and our soon forthcoming Members Forum. In this forum, members will be able to get answers on how to answer their particular issues. So let's say you need a good plumber or safe air testing company. You may need a good credit reporting agency or maybe the best place to buy doors. Hours of research can be avoided simply by getting answers from other members of the organization. Working together as a group, you know, it can also provide stronger buying power. So finally, we're getting excited about developing a property listing service, which is on DARA Now's website. This will provide prospective tenants with one central place to find quality housing from landlords that abide by a code of ethics. We believe this centralized property listing service will experience tremendous growth through consumer usage. Prospective tenants will save a great deal of time using DARA Now website instead of calling several landlords and searching numerous websites. So currently we have member information and availability, but our forthcoming service will be more user-friendly and provide a great deal of detailed information about each property.
And Brad, tell us about that website again. What is the website again actually with the...
It's www.daranow.com. So go on to that site. You can see what we've got going on there.
And you pooled a lot of information, it sounds like, too, so make it very easy for people utilizing that site.
Absolutely. We're working on it all the time. You know, we've only been around for 7 months, so we got a lot to do, but each day we're expanding and trying to make it as user-friendly as possible. So
you're listening to the DARA Show here on 1360 WLBK. Give us a call. Any thoughts you have, comments, 748-1360, 748-1360. Now, Brad, before we talked about code of ethics, I wonder if you could explain that a little bit more. What are we talking about when we see...
Well, we wanted to, members of the DeKalb Area Rental Association recognize our duty to the public and the close working relationship needed between tenants and the owners and managers. So what we do is we strive to provide the rental housing public with a quality service based on high standards of honesty and integrity. So this code of ethics is listed on our website. All the members sign the form when becoming a DARA member. And if you have a tenant, have a bad experience with a landlord, come to our organization to find the landlords who subscribe to this code of ethics. You can get on there, and it should lead to a much better working relationship with your next landlord.
And, Brad, one more thing from you now, if you could explain. Now, you guys have been publicly voicing opposition to the DeKalb City government proposed licensing and inspection. Explain that, if you would, in a little more detail.
Well, you know, we certainly have been voicing our opposition to licensing and inspection. We've made it clear over the last several shows several reasons why. Many respected members of our community have also expressed these concerns in opposition, including the Safe and Quality Housing Task Force Committee, which was appointed by the city. These folks are respected members of the community. They don't see a need for that. They've spent a great deal of volunteer time reviewing city proposals. They've worked well with the city to develop the disorderly housing ordinance and recommend its approval. But This task force is unanimously opposed to license and inspection. So license and inspection would have an impact on nearly every person in this community. Recent weeks, we have provided several reasons, including the fact that a majority of the tenants don't want the city intrusions. Today, we'll discuss some of the detrimental effects on homeowners as well as property owners. Yes, even though the ordinance is aimed at landlords, it will cost every homeowner in DeKalb.
And again, everybody listening to this show, if you have an opinion or thoughts on this, 748-1360. We also have Bob Carlson with us today of Carlson Appraisal Services to discuss the impact of the L&I and we'll have on the real estate and valuations in the community. Bob, you've been in the real estate appraisal business in DeKalb for several decades. You understand each variable that affects property values. How do these ordinances affect income property values overall?
Terry, as you say, I've been in the real estate appraisal business for decades. I started with DeKalb Savings and Loan in 7/7 of 77, so I'll be meeting my 35th year.
That was your lucky day, I guess, when you got hired. Yeah.
I wish it had been, yes. And then more recently, my wife and I and my son, who lives in New York City, have invested in 136 apartment units. So I have knowledge on both sides of the net. What is important with the income producing property, obviously the gross income that we receive from our properties, and then we have to look at vacancy and collection losses. And during recent years, the vacancy and collection losses have increased somewhat. And as you look at that, you get an effective gross income, and from that you take away your expenses to get a net operating income, and then you capitalize that into value. So as we look at the licensing fee and subsequent fees to be incurred by the landlords during this period of stable and declining rents, we have an effect on net income. And having an effect on net income, as you capitalize that into value, there will be a lesser value. There has been some investor concerns with an increase, and interest will decrease as this takes place. Recently, a real estate broker told me that he had investors tell him, "We're not interested in investing investment properties in DeKalb. Did you hear what DeKalb is trying to do?" So there is uncertainty that's taken place. In fact, Jim just told me a story before we got here, and I'll open the mic to Jim to tell me that story about Berwyn.
Yes, Terry, Bob, I've been talking to some people down in Berwyn, and here's a situation that's very disturbing where a restaurateur is developing and improving his property. He's got permits, he's ready to go, and this project is all permitted. And all of a sudden, the code enforcement showed up one day and said, "Listen, we'd like you to buy this book." And the owner said, "Well, we don't need a book. What's the book all about?" "Well, it shows you how to do the project." Well, the restaurateur says, "Well, we know how to do the project. We're permitted, and we're licensed with the city with all these contractors. What's this all about?" "Well, you need to buy this book for $500. You just do." So the owner said, "No, I won't do it." They shut the project down. So the restaurateur said, "Well, let's talk about it." So he paid the $500, got the book, and the project went on. The point I'm trying to make here is that when you give this kind of power to unelected officials all over the state of Illinois and all over the United States, we have so much regulation that is really unbridled. And when you have these inspection programs, whether it's Red Wing, Minnesota, or Peoria, Illinois, or DeKalb, Illinois, or whatever, you can't give unelected officials this kind of power to control how people run their businesses. So I just wanted to bring that up. It's one reason that we're so afraid of this, the uncertainty of how this program would be administered if it ever goes through at all. Terry?
All right, very interesting story there. Again, 748-1360. Any comments you have about what's going on with the DeKalb housing right now? Let's kind of set the tone right now. What's going on here? We have reduced NIU enrollment. We have higher vacancy rates, higher water and trash bills, and 1,000 new dormitory bedroom opening this fall. I don't know who wants to take this, but can landlords afford to comply with the new demands of the city inspection?
You know, Terry, that's really good that you brought that up. I just got 30 or 40 tax bills last week. It was last week. And they went up 4%. They went up 4%. Now, if you go Zillow.com, and you can find out what the value of your house is based on your address all over the United States, in DeKalb, the value of properties dropped 35% in the last 5 years. 35%. The other thing is with the university losing 3,000 to 4,000 students, we have vacancies in some of these rental properties. Gross income is dropping. In my case, I think I dropped $300,000 last year. Now, how in the world can taxes go up when the value drops 35%? So between what goes on with EVA, assessed valuation, and what goes on with these new programs that might be coming from the city, you can see a train wreck for the homeowner as well as the businessman and the rental property. Terry?
So it's almost like a perfect storm, all these elements coming together like this.
Yes, it is a perfect storm. And when you see foreclosures and defaults, it's because people don't have the money. Either they don't have a job, or they don't take in enough rent, or it costs too much to do business. So that's why DARA wants to be in a working relationship with the city from now on to express really what goes on the ground and in the streets so they can work with us to do this. Go ahead, Jerry.
All right, very good. Now, if the DeKalb income property values decline, then what happens to real estate tax base? And that's a question that I'm sure all of us here in DeKalb want to know. Bob, you got that? What do you think?
Yes. I put a small case study together on just using one apartment unit, theoretically renting at $500 a month. That provided a gross income of $6,000 a year. And then you also have to look at vacancy and collection losses of the industry looks at 5%. So the effective gross income would be $5,700. And you take away the expenses estimated at 32%, and we have a net operating income of $3,876. And then you take the cap rate and divide that by 8%, and you have the value to that one unit of $48,450. So that's the before it situation. Now the after situation, we'll take the same $500 a month, but from this point we're going to look at an additional expense of just theoretically $50 for the licensing fee. That gives us a $3,826 net operating income. But this is where things start changing. Going back to what the real estate realtor mentioned to me, that investors are not looking at DeKalb because they're concerned about the unknowns. The cap rate is going to have to increase because there's additional risk to any investor. So just moving the cap rate up by 0.25%, that indicates a value to that same unit of $46,375, or a reduction in value of $2,074. Now you take $2,074 times 9,000 units in DeKalb, that's a decrease in market values of almost $19 million. And that is what's going to take place, in my opinion. And of course you can say, well, where does that value go? Well, it's kind of like walking down the street in Las Vegas and seeing a street magician all of a sudden have something in the house and in his hand, and boom, it's gone. And that's exactly the same thing that'll happen with all this value.
And Bob's taken a conservative approach to this. If you think about it, really, $50 for the fee that the city, we're using a random number, but certainly is going to be $50. But let's say the inspector comes in and says, hey, your door is dragging on the threshold, you need to take care of that. The tenants are over there saying, you know what, we don't mind, it's no big deal. Well, next thing you know, you're going to fix a door. Maybe if that doesn't work, the inspectors come back and say, you know what, you really ought to just go ahead and go with a new door. You need a new door in there. So the next thing you know, it's not just $50, it's $300, or it's this and that, and all of a sudden, these values continue to go down. We're talking conservatively $18 million out of the revenue or the tax base for DeKalb. I mean, it's minimum.
That's some scary numbers. Bob, I'm sorry.
And I also should mention that the $500 a month is a very conservative amount. There are several apartments that are significantly more than that, depending on the number of bedrooms and bathrooms in the DeKalb market area. So that $19 million is probably more, between 25 and 30 million.
We're talking to our friends from the DeKalb Area Rental Association, encouraging your phone calls at 748-1360, 748-1360, whether you want a comment or chime in, or maybe you have a proposal as well. But what I'm hearing is that, well, let's take a phone call. I'm sorry, I thought we had one coming in. But let's talk about, the word is out, it sounds like. Brad, is this what we're hearing, as Bob was alluding to? People are hearing about this, what may go down here in DeKalb.
Well, right, and I mean the variables are a little scary with everything that's going on, but the point being that it's not only going to affect the tenant whose privacy is invaded. It's not only going to affect the landlord who incurs the additional fees, it's going to affect the homeowner. And the homeowner is going to be affected by additional taxes. Let's say the tax base goes down $20 million. Guess what? The DeKalb still needs that fund of money, so the tax rate adjusts. Guess what? That tax rate's going to be on every real estate piece of property in town. Well, it just went up, of course, with the things that are going on. I just got a couple tax bills the other day. Wow. It seemed like it was steady for years and years in that 8% range of equalized assessed value. It's then it jumped just up around 9. This year jumped to 9 3/4 or something. I mean, and it's only going to go higher for other reasons besides this. But you pull that $20 million out, it's got to be offset by somebody with on the homeowner's side paying a higher portion of those bills.
Or the county and the cities and the municipalities have to be more efficient. My way of thinking, if the value of all these assets drops, then the value to these taxing bodies should trickle down what's commensurate with the devaluation in the assets. So if we create more work for the landlords, we lose $20 million. And if the market takes these assets into 35% arrears, the taxing bodies themselves are going to have to step up and say, hey, we can't keep raising taxes when the value of everything goes down. You have a train wreck, and that means that people that live in their homes won't be able to afford to live in their homes another 10 years. Terry?
So this is where people in DeKalb are really perking up, I think, when you talk about real estate taxes, too. And as you alluded to, Brad, this money has to be made up somewhere, right? And that what comes down to the property tax.
Well, that's what they work their budgets off of. So, they're expecting that income and that revenue. So, it's always a moving target with values. They're always going to adjust and things. But when you're creating additional situations that dramatically make this change, it's like Jim says, you either got to lower your expenses at the city government or you've got to raise taxes, one or the other.
All right, now, Bob, let's talk a little more detail here. Bob, you spent some time scrutinizing the effect of licensing and inspections. Have you talked to your peers and others in the appraisal business about the impact of these types of ordinance? And if you had, have you read anything about the effects on other communities? Because Jim touched on that, too.
I have. There was an article in Investors Business Daily that spoke of both in Minnesota and in Florida, where they're starting to license properties. And in the Florida, I contacted the woman, and her name is Michelle Brazard, a regional manager with Watson Real Estate Property, and they lease properties throughout Central Florida. And the one question I asked to her, because this is very important to me, also as an appraiser and a property owner, was, did this have a positive or negative effect on real estate? She says that immediately she said negative. So that was one situation that I can speak of. The second, and I'm going to repeat myself again, is a local realtor told me that his clients were complaining about the things that are going on in DeKalb, and that they would not invest in income-producing properties in DeKalb. And then the third thing is I've been speaking with other appraisers. One of the appraisers I spoke with was at a recent seminar I had to take, and the gentleman is a member of the Appraisal Institute with an MAI designation, and he's licensed in 35 states. And I asked him, of course I knew what the answer was probably before I asked him, but I thought, well, I would ask him anyway, and he said, yes, that is a negative. So what's happening is that as I've spoken with these people, that I can see that this is going to have a negative influence on not only me as an investor in income-producing properties, but as a part of my professional business of value in real estate. I have to take this into consideration.
So we have the ability to look at other communities and see what's going on there. And Brad, obviously you've done that, and you can see what the results may be based on what's happening there.
Absolutely. I think you can't focus on just one particular community. Mm-hmm. You definitely got to spread your wings and take a look and talk to a lot of different folks. You can't just go to one community and talk to the municipality and have them tell you that it's a great program, because there's a lot more effects, and not only effects that might not happen immediately, but down the road there's the trickling effect of things, and that comes with time and the cost and the inspections that require more work and the slow process of things going downhill in that situation.
Still time to get your phone calls in. Jim, go ahead, please. I'm sorry.
I've been in business in DeKalb since, 66 or 1967. And I had a slew of student houses. And one reason I got out of the student house business was because of the inspection programs. It was so unscientific, and it was so impersonal in so many cases. And so I went into the apartment business over the last 40 years, and it's been wonderful. I just don't want to go back into that. Go ahead, Terry.
Okay, very good. And, when we talk about housing stock, I wonder if we could define that term. And we talk about the quality of housing stock, and we're losing that. And then why has a license and inspection become so important now when we talk about housing stock? Bob, do you got that one?
Yes, Terry, thank you. One of the things I can mention is in 35 years of valuing real estate in the DeKalb market, I have certainly seen the majority of the apartment units in the community. And I'd like to say that I had to go down to Macomb, Western Illinois University, and do an appraisal down there. And my first trip down there was that a local developer had gone down there because they said that the quality of the properties were not very good. And so we went down there, and one of the first things he did was drive me by an apartment complex, and he said, "What do you think of this?" I said, "Well, it looks like Army barracks." He said, "Well, that's what they call it here at Western Illinois, is barracks." So as they went down there and put in the product that they do here in DeKalb, Macomb was very excited about them, and in fact they started selling excess parcels of ground to the Star Properties, and they started building additional units there. And from there, they went down to Carbondale, or Southern Illinois University, and I went down there to do the appraisal, and I walked in and talked to the assistant city manager, and he says, "Oh, yeah, John and Rolf, yeah, we love those guys down here." So the point being is that we have some real quality property owners here in DeKalb that do excellent jobs. And I've seen that. I would have to say at least 90% of the properties here in DeKalb are well managed and well run, and it's just a matter of maybe 10% that will certainly need help. And I think the DARA organization, as we go out and work harder, that we can maybe turn those last 10% around.
All right, very good. Still time to sneak in a phone call at 748-1360, 748-1360. And now, Jim, the city of DeKalb and NIU are proposing a housing data study to get a better understanding of DeKalb's housing stock, now that we know what that is. What do you want from this study, and why do you think the study is important, or why are they doing this study? I guess that's what I should ask you.
Well, if you ask me, we don't need the study. The city can do what they want to define what is out there. But really, everybody really knows what is out there. Now, if Kent Shodine comes into this community, he has to do his own studies anyway. He's not going to rely on the city and the university study that's proposed for $120,000. Every investor has to do due diligence on his own, and the city knows very well what they have, and I'm really not sure why they are going to do it. But more importantly, if you're going to have license and inspection and you're going to change people's lives, you might want to do a study. What would happen if you do license and inspect, Terry?
All right, very good. We have a phone call. Let's take a caller. Hi, do you have a question for the panel here?
Yes, question for Bob Carlson. Bob, how can you come up with 32 2% expense ratios when the taxes on these apartments in DeKalb are over 23%, and management's 6%. We can't run buildings. Most of other people with rental properties can't run them for less than 40 or 45%. And I think that the properties are grossly overvalued from a tax perspective. Can you answer that question?
Well, that was just a basic figure that I used just to show the before and after. Obviously, each individual property will have a different amount of expenses attributed to that property. So this was nothing more than just an example to show people that there can be a significant loss in value under those situations.
Okay, I appreciate that, and because I own a duplex, and my taxes are 35% of the gross income just based on the gross. So, I mean, when you get smaller units, the taxes take sometimes 30 or 35%.
Yeah, exactly. So smaller units are going to have a different effect on them than possibly 120 or 150 units.
Well, even a project of my size of 60 units per se, I'm up at around 40% operating expenses. And if you think about the fact that if this market continues to change and we have to turn over apartments more than once a year, then they're only going to go up higher. So certainly there's that to consider.
So would you say that most of the apartment complexes in this area are overtaxed?
Yes, they are overtaxed, and that's what I just said a few minutes ago. With a 4% increase in the tax rate, and the value of all these properties, for one reason or another, is dropping in the community, we have a train wreck. That's why the caller is very correct. That's why we have to get together with the county board and the taxing people to turn this thing around and make it work for the community. Go ahead.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for your call, sir. All right, well, that's hearing it right from our landlord himself. So that's what you guys are doing this show, right? Because Brad and Jim, you want this feedback, don't you?
Absolutely. We want everybody to understand what's going on out there, and everybody's got their own experiences with the city and things like that. So that's the whole purpose, is to bring awareness to the public, as well as let them understand what could be forthcoming. So while we're bringing awareness to the public, I certainly want to say the Housing Authority of DeKalb County and DeKalb Area Rental Association invites you to a presentation of Jennifer Gelman of Prairie Street Legal Services. And what we're doing is a seminar of Fair Housing 101, and that's Tuesday, May 29th, 2012 at 2 p.m. and another one at 7 p.m. The public is invited. It's basically an educational time for people to learn a little bit more about housing, and, please come.
And where will that be located at, Brad? Where is that being held?
That's a good question. I got to get that information.
Okay, and I bet it's going to be on your website, DARA Now. Right?
Yes,
People
absolutely. It will be on the website. I don't have it written in front of me here. I apologize for that.
All right, so go to daranow.com, daranow.com. And again, Jim and Brad, this is why you guys are doing this show, to get the feedback from other landlords in the area. And as you said, this affects virtually everybody living in DeKalb.
It absolutely does. And from the income side to the expense side, we're on this together, and the real estate business is not a cash cow.
All right, very good. And Bob, thank you so much for your insight today. We appreciate you coming on there. I know it's kind of scary taking phone calls, but we appreciate you coming on and being a guest with us today, Bob.
Thank you very much, Terry.
All right, and Brad, again, we encourage people, if you're a landlord who doesn't belong to the DARA Association, we can't imagine why, but go to daranow.com and get all the information first, and then find out about it.
That's right, daranow.com. If you're a landlord in town, I would encourage you to get involved. Members enjoy the benefits of education, relationships, and better ways to run your business. So please check us out at daranow.com.
All right, and thanks everybody for being part of the DARA radio show. Tune in again next Monday at 9:30 as we address more current issues in rental housing. Remember, other members of the DARA group include Bill's Properties, DeKalb Housing Authority, and Halverson Apartments. So thank you, gentlemen, so much for enlightening us in the community. We look forward to the show again next week.
Thank you so much, Terry.
Thank you, Terry.
Republicans still deeply divided on ways to keep interest rates from doubling this summer. Education Secretary Arnie Duncan telling MSNBC's Morning Joe the clock is ticking.
They need to act before July 1st, do it in a bipartisan way, and keep